Maggie in Season 11, Episode 12. Just, wow. It's like I forgot how wildly out of line she was when she accused Meredith of cheating. The judgment, the accusations, it's like she couldn't wait to throw her sister under the bus. Sure, I get it was all for the drama and to stir up trouble, but it ended up being completely pointless. Meredith missed her flight to see Derek, her husband, who, mind you, she hasn't seen in a while. She was embarrassed, not out there scheming behind his back. But no, Maggie jumps to the worst possible conclusion and, wait for it, accuses Meredith of making her lie. Like, Maggie, seriously, you lost me there. Now I know people go absolutely feral if you say anything bad about Maggie. But let's get real for a second. Could Meredith have sent Maggie a quick text to say she was staying at an airport hotel because she was too tired to fight with Derek? Yeah, absolutely. She totally could have. But accusing someone of cheating? That's where I draw the line. You can have your suspicions, but to just blurt it out like that, especially at work, is not okay. And don't get me started on the way the writers set it up. So sketchy, but it turns out the only real cheater was Derek. Talk about an overblown drama. Now, let's at least try to be fair here. I know Maggie's an easy target for hate, but can we find actual moments where she messed up? Like when Meredith was begging for someone to watch her kids so she could see Derek, Maggie, being the sweet person she is, stepped up. Then Meredith, for reasons, doesn't make the flight, spends the weekend in a hotel alone, and poof, that's a weird move, right? Like, who does that? And let's be honest, Maggie didn't know Meredith well enough to understand the full picture. So of course, she jumps to conclusions, and knowing Maggie, she wasn't going to let it slide. I mean, come on. Wouldn't you think the same thing if you were in Maggie's shoes? Meredith doesn't show up to DC, and that's a huge red flag. So yeah, Maggie had every reason to think the worst. I'm just saying, let's stop acting like she's a villain every time she does something human. Honestly, let's not pretend Maggie's hands are completely clean here. Watching S16E7, I don't think Sebi's death is entirely Maggie's fault, but let's be real, she's far from blameless. The surgical tech who was running the bypass machine should have absolutely spoken up when the clotting time wasn't rising properly. It's kind of a big deal when someone's life is on the line, right? Or at least mentioned that, hey, you don't actually work here, and our protocol says you're supposed to check with me about clotting times. But no silence. Maggie? Well, she definitely shares some of the blame. She pressured Sabi into letting her do the surgery at an unfamiliar hospital. Sure, she might have thought she could pull it off, but maybe she should have realized that knowing the protocols and the staff matters more than her ego. There's a reason doctors have home turf advantages, Maggie. Weber's no saint either. He knew Pac North had a bunch of issues, including undertrained staff. He should have known better than to push for this, especially since he knew the hospital's track record. Now, I'm not saying Maggie is outright responsible. Someone should have warned her about the clot, but let's not act like she was completely in the dark. Maggie basically talked Sabi and her family into letting her operate, even when Sabi didn't want it. Because, of course, Maggie's ego took over, and she prioritized her own need to prove herself over ensuring the best possible care for the patient. And don't even get me started on the tech who didn't speak up. You're in an OR, dealing with a human life, and you still can't find the courage to say something when things go wrong? Totally irresponsible. But honestly, Maggie wasn't exactly walking into that operating room with a let's save lives mentality. No, she had a massive attitude going in, and her ego could have played a bigger role in Sebi's death than anyone wants to admit. If I could rewrite a storyline, oh, where do I even begin? Let's start with Alex's tragic departure, because, of course, it made perfect sense for him to completely transform, find his person, and then just bail. Classic Alex, right? I mean, his dad abandoned him, and we all know Alex would never pull a move like that with Joe. But surprise, he totally did. Sure, he's still going to be part of the kids' leaves, but why not bring Jo along for the ride? Wouldn't want her to have a say in this life-changing decision or anything. Then there's George's death. What a masterpiece of storytelling. Instead of, I don't know, letting him go to Iraq and just staying there, if Shonda really couldn't bring herself to bring TR back, heaven forbid, they just had to kill him off. The world of possibilities, and we got that. And let's talk about the Izzy kid storyline, because it's the gift that keeps on giving. I hate it, but even if they were really desperate to keep that whole mess, it would have been far more logical for Alex to, I don't know, actually communicate with his wife. Maybe tell everyone the truth, try long distance with Jo, and then mutually agree that, surprise, surprise, it wasn't going to work out. But no, let's just jump straight to the drama. Classic. Now, Derek's death. Oh sure, let's take a beloved character, totally ruin his storyline, and kill him off in the most abrupt, out-of-nowhere way possible. I get it, great writing, but maybe, just maybe, they could have had him move to DC. You know, so he and Meredith could have the charming long-distance relationship where we could still see him pop in from time to time, and Meredith could, oh, I don't know, actually shine on her own for once. But hey, that would have made too much sense. And George again, why not just have him join the military, like the whole reason he enlisted in the first place? Oh wait, that would have been too easy. Instead, let's kill him off, leaving his entire story arc in ruins. But hey, at least they could have kept the door open for a possible redemption arc, where he could come back, make up for all his mistakes, and get his redemption. But nope, just dead. Classic. So apparently April isn't a ginger. Well, that's news to me. I'm randomly watching Grey's Anatomy S10E11, the one where April's sisters pop up for the bridal shower, and let me just say, I had an epiphany. They all have the exact same hair color, which I found a bit odd considering I've never once thought of April as a natural redhead. I mean, in her early episodes, her hair was definitely brown, more on the brownish side than gingery. It wasn't until later that it slowly transformed into more of a copper, auburn situation. So, I always just assumed her natural hair color was that sort of dark blonde/brown vibe from the beginning. But then, bam, enter her sisters, all sporting the same fiery hair, and I'm like, okay, are they seriously trying to convince me this is their natural color? It literally looked like they all went to the same drugstore, bought the same box dye, and called it a day. Here's my headcanon. April dyed her hair either to blend in better, avoid the whole ginger teasing, or to avoid being mistaken for Reed. And after Reed's death, she was like, you know what, screw it, I'll just go back to my real color. Fun fact, Sarah Drew, who plays April, is actually a natural brunette. They had her dye her hair for the show because people kept confusing her with Lexie. The actress who played Kimmy, full-on redhead. Connie Ray, who plays her mom, is probably a natural redhead too. But let's be real, that's probably dyed now because, well, age does its thing. But seriously, why make them all redheads? Most redheads I know don't come from an entire family of them. It's kind of an odd choice, especially since April definitely seemed like the type to dye her hair brown to blend in during med school. Then, once she started gaining a bit more confidence post-read, she probably just said, yeah, I'm going back to my roots. Literally. So let's talk about Alex's ending. I know, it's probably not an original thought, but I was diving into this and couldn't find anyone else with a similar take. So here I am, possibly wade too deep into my 1000th rewatch of Grey's Anatomy, don't judge, and I've hit season 6, where Izzy leaves, and Alex shows some actual character growth by finally realizing he deserves to be in a relationship where he's valued. What a concept. But here's the thing, after seeing where he ends up, I'm like, what? His ending just doesn't add up. So I'm thinking, what if we had a different take on this? Just hear me out. I honestly think it would have made way more sense for Alex to be written off, in jail, Stick with me on this. He actually goes to visit his mom, gets sucked into all the small-town, dysfunctional family drama, and of course, commits yet another crime. Yeah, shocking, I know. Now he's in jail. He doesn't let anyone know, like how Meredith ghosted everyone after Derek's death. Sound familiar? And this is where we get the letters. He's stuck in there for a good long while, so he divorces Jo because, let's be real, his life choices have consequences. And Jo gets a proper arc instead of just being left in the dust. Call me crazy, but I think this would have been a way more realistic way to salvage his character. And seriously, criminal acts are practically a requirement for this show. Now, if we keep the storyline where Izzy becomes a mom, here's my alternate version. Alex has gone off the radar, but instead of ghosting Jo and sending her the cold, cryptic letters, he actually comes back or calls her. And guess what? He tells her Izzy's having kids, or maybe even better, Izzy's just now deciding to go through with having them, and she gave Alex the heads up. Classic Izzy move. Since we know Alex can't stand the idea of kids out there that he's not involved with, he did have that whole, I'm a dad now, freak out earlier, remember? He begs Jo to pack up and move with him to wherever Izzy is living now. Kansas, maybe? Or did I just make that up? Honestly, who cares, it works. This would let the storyline drag out a little more. Jo moves with Alex, they get a place near Izzy, and Alex quits his job to live there permanently. Meanwhile, Jo's bouncing back and forth between the two worlds. It's a mess. Then comes the heart-to-heart with Meredith. Jo sits down, tells her she's not sure she can do it. She respects Alex's need to be there for his kids, but honestly, she feels like a third wheel. Meredith, being Meredith, gives her the classic, he's not the son, you are speech. All the inspirational crap we've come to expect. In the end, Jo realizes she can't just be the supporting character in Alex's life movie. She needs to live her own life, so she decides to stay in Seattle. They divorce, amicably, of course, but Jo's still pretty torn up about it, given her history with relationships. If you want to be super dramatic about it, maybe you imply that Alex eventually gets back together with Izzy, but honestly, who knows? And here's the best part. Justin Chambers doesn't even need to be on screen. Just have him voice a call instead of narrating some goodbye letter. All of the scenes with Izzy can stay off screen. They are basically off screen anyway, and Jo can fill us in with her updates to Meredith. Voila! More episodes. Alex doesn't cheat on Jo, and 2 decades of character growth doesn't get totally trashed for the sake of reviving an old pairing. It leaves the door wide open for potential return if the actor ever wants to come back, without totally burning any bridges. Makes way more sense, right? Murder is kind of a lot. I didn't really notice it until I rewatched the show later, but Derek is, honestly, pretty mean to Meredith in the later seasons. I was all for them in season 1 before Addison showed up, and even in season 3, but as the show went on, he really started saying some out-of-pocket things to her. It's like he casually exploits her mommy issues and intimacy struggles for his own benefit. Let's be real, he's downright cruel to her for most of their relationship, and honestly, I low-key can't stand them together. Derek is the complete opposite of the charming, McDreamy image we were sold. He's so toxic, it's insane. The way he treated both Meredith and Addison, just appalling. I'd even go so far as to say Derek was emotionally abusive, especially during those little tantrums of his. And let's talk about the hypocrisy for a second. This world-renowned surgeon in the field Meredith was interested in. She had such potential in neurosurgery that Weber literally asked her to scrub in with Amelia during Herman's surgery. But no, Derek had to come along and crush her dreams, and she quit because of him. What a guy! If Lexie were still around, who would be her best friend? It's a question that lingers because, let's face it, pretty much every character in the show has a best friend, but Lexie never quite got that slot. So who's the most likely candidate? Well, maybe April or Jo, if they ever had the chance to meet. Both could totally vibe with Lexie, given their personalities. But wait, there's also Maggie. Sure, she's a possibility too. Then again, Lexie and Amelia, that's actually an interesting combo. They shared some really great moments, and while their personalities were, like, polar opposites, they both had this fierce loyalty and a knack for supporting their friends. Lexie had the patience for Amelia's impulsive nature, and Amelia could have easily been a mentor for Lexie, helping her navigate life. So who knows? Maybe it could have been Amelia after all. Oh, where do I even begin with this episode? Honestly, it's like the writers handed the reins to a 12-year-old Izzy/Alex shipper who just discovered the concept of drama and thought, yeah, I can do this. The whole thing feels like one big, cringy fanfic, complete with the kind of plot twist that makes you think, oh, it was all a dream. The way the letters were written, a train wreck of clunky amateur writing, like a desperate attempt to be quirky with messages that scream, sorry, gotta go, kids want pizza sushi. I could probably write a whole thesis on how each line fails to capture anything meaningful, especially the characters' reactions. This is pure rage fuel, and I'm here for it. Sure, I get it. Alex's actor left unexpectedly, and they had to scramble to wrap up his story. But even with that explanation, the way he just bolted back to Izzy when he was head over heels for Joe, there was absolutely zero build-up, and the whole thing just feels like a lazy cop-out. They could have come up with something, anything, better than this. And honestly, Elizabeth Finch, the writer of this mess, has all the subtlety of someone writing fanfiction in middle school, so you're not off the mark with that comparison. It's like she took the most dramatic, nonsensical idea and just went with it, because why not? Also, can we talk about Alex's handwriting? It was so atrocious that it practically had its own storyline. But hey, he was a doctor, right? So I guess it's believable he'd scribble like that. Still, every time I saw it, I wanted to scream. Now, I do get what you're saying about the ending. It's weird, right? The whole Alex loves Izzy because of the kids thing just doesn't feel genuine. He literally says he would leave Izzy and the kids if Meredith asked, so like, what's the point of any of this? It's almost as if they wanted to make Alex look like he was making some grand romantic gesture, but instead, it just comes off as a mess. It's like they're stuck in this 1940s sitcom mindset where the only way to make things right is to have a traditional family unit, 2 biological parents. Honestly, it's just outdated and lazy, and I'm still pissed off about it. Ah, the Minnick storyline. The ultimate example of let's stir the pot and then sweep it under the rug. So you've just finished rewatching season 13, and yeah, it's frustrating as hell. The writers couldn't even stick to a single plan, could they? 1 minute, Catherine's giving this passionate speech about how Grace Sloan used to be a top-tier teaching hospital, and then, like a bad soap opera twist, she's pulling the plug on Minnick and all her efforts to bring it into the 21st century. Here's the thing. Minnick actually made some valid points. Catherine's complaints about the intern/resident program were spot on. The hospital was failing those people. So they bring in Minnick, who does help, right? She's pushing for better protocols, more structure, and trying to make sure things don't fall apart every time someone flubs an internship. But then, surprise, surprise, Minnick gets canned. Why? Because it turns out none of the disasters would have happened if people had just followed protocol. I mean, really, none of it would have gone down if Weber hadn't let Stephanie back on service after her breakdown. She never would have broken protocol, tried to drag the rapist to see his victim, or ended up trapped on a floor with him, sparking a fire and an explosion. Oh, and Meredith doesn't follow protocol either, but yeah, let's all blame Minnick for not making sure the police were tracking down the missing girl. Classic. And what does Bailey do in the end? Fires Minnick, all while waving around the injured girl as the reason why Minnick's failure was a problem. And I mean, sure, the girl's recovery is great and all, But let's not pretend that's actually going to fix the deeper issues at the hospital, because, spoiler alert, it doesn't. By season 18, the place is literally shut down and scrambling to take in rejects by season 19. But here's the thing that really gets me. What was the point of introducing Minnick in the first place? Why even try to change anything if you're just going to toss it out at the end of the season? She was supposed to shake things up, but when she gets fired, all that change just goes out the window. And really, if you took Minnick out of the entire season, it would have been like she never existed. Honestly, it feels like the whole Minnick arc was just filler drama to make things interesting, because after all, fans hated her, even after they tried to redeem her with Arizona's ill-fated romance. So what do? Write her out at the end of the season, wrap up all the drama, and call it a happy ending. And that's the real kicker. Season 13 is just one of many filler seasons where arcs go nowhere and nothing ever really progresses. It's like they were just marking time until anything happened. So yeah, the Minnick storyline was mostly just there to mess with our heads. And honestly, I'm here for the drama, but it's just a classic case of, well, that was pointless. What's the big deal with Jackson and April? Okay, I know this is probably the most unpopular opinion ever, but seriously, why are people so obsessed with them as a couple? They were like oil and water. They clashed on just about everything. Yeah, they had some chemistry during the board exam drama, but that's about it. Once we learned that April was all about waiting until marriage because of her religion, it was clear they were on two completely different planets. Sure, opposites attract and all that, but these two? They were too different. I'm not just talking about Jackson's money or his fancy life. There were fundamental differences in how they lived, how they saw the world. And for April, those differences weren't even negotiable. It's not like she was just going to magically change her core beliefs. I'll admit, I was kind of here for their last-minute rekindling, though. I see where people are coming from when they talk about Jackson's love for April. He wasn't in love with some idealized version of her or trying to mold her into something she wasn't. He genuinely loved her for who she was. That's cool, I guess. And okay, they did have some serious chemistry, and I'll give them credit for finding their way back to each other after Jackson had his come-to-Jesus moment, literally, by praying her back to life, and April had her whole faith crisis. By the end, they finally found some middle ground, which made them more compatible than when they started, though back then, it seemed like that was a huge roadblock. So yeah, Reddit, you kind of changed my mind. Well done.